Ed, how you doing?
I'm very well, thanks, mate.
Good. I was just telling you, we watched your ant episode. Your new series is out. It is
Yeah,
absolutely astonishing. Please just tell people what you did in Brazil because it's so. I mean, the recent thing you did in Brazil, which has just come out.
yeah. Okay. So the series was about rite of passage ceremonies,
Mm.
and this one specifically was the Santarema Way tribe, which is a Brazilian tribe who have a tradition of putting their hands in gloves full of bullet ants. And then for people who don't know what bullet ants are, there's a pain scale of insects from 0 to 4, and bullet ants are the top. They're number 4, and so it's more than a scorpion. It's more than a tarantula. It's like, I don't know, maybe one bullet ant sting is 20 wasp stings, something like that. But
Oh my god.
interestingly, the pain lasts for about 16 hours, and it
Yeah.
doesn't go away. And it actually has something in the toxin. It's not a venom, it's a toxin. It has something in the toxin that stops the body producing its own painkillers like morphine and adrenaline and all the things that would normally flood your body to stop pain. It
Mm.
bypasses that, so it keeps the pain there. It's nuts. Anyway, I had 80 of these sewn into each glove, and I had to put my
Yeah.
hands in the gloves for about 6 minutes and do this little dance, ceremonial dance, and then had to endure 16 hours of probably the most excruciating pain I've ever had in my life. If that is now my 10 out of 10, obviously, in
Yeah.
terms of the pain scale. Nothing before it comes above a 3. It's bonkers.
Really?
Nothing, but maybe a 4. But no, no higher than that. It was so above and beyond what I've ever felt in terms of pain. I mean, people do compare it to childbirth. Men never experience real pain, like
Mm.
women obviously have to go through. And in fact, some of the tribal members chatted about that. She said, "You will go through what it's more pain than it is
Mm.
to go through childbirth." And
Did you
it
say
was
that to
bonkers.
your
It's a bit
wife?
like, well, it's a difficult one. It's a difficult one to unpack with women, because a lot of rite
Mm.
of passage ceremonies around the world are for men. And I was
Mm.
looking at that as well, and I thought, do you know what? That actually is, because I genuinely think, this is my layman observation of it, is because women go through their own rite of passage. They have
Mm.
this extraordinarily tough event that they know that they want to go through, but they know it's going to be really hard, and they put themselves through and they prepare themselves mentally, and they manage themselves through it, and they come out the other side a different human being. And that's exactly what a rite of passage is. They come out the
Mm.
other side a mother, more responsible, more resilient, more all sorts of things. All that selfishness of youth gets
Mm.
kind of left behind. So it's fascinating, really
You're
fascinating.
very and you touched upon that in the episode that we watched last night.
Mm,
It's not the only we watched. We loved it. We did say throughout we were like, we've seen Ed going through the Amazon for 2.5 years. He'll be all right. But I'm amazed to hear
yeah.
that that's your 10 and everything else was a 3.
Well, there was no pain in the Amazon. Put it in terms of pain, not as in terms of the most difficult thing I've gone through.
Mm.
Definitely not. Like,
Yeah.
in terms of pure pain, it was 10, and nothing else is, 3 or 4. I think, I don't know. I think something like that. I always knew that I was going to have to manage my way through it, because it wasn't going to go away. So if it started really hurting initially, and I
Mm.
went, I want this to go away, I'm going to go into a spiral downwards, because I'll start fucking panicking. Sorry, because
That's all
I
right.
don't have. I don't have the ability to make it go away. And
Mm.
also, I knew that none of the painkillers that the crew had would even work on it, because of the way the toxins work. And so I knew I had to manage it differently. And so I had to actually coach myself to, this is a privilege. What Westerner gets the opportunity to go into a tribe like this and experience this level of sensation? I would rebranded it sensation rather than pain, so that, you know, I'm gonna enjoy every moment of this. And do you know what? It did work. That positive spin on it, that, walking into something going, this is my decision, I want to do this, stopped me spiraling negatively, until about 4 hours into it, when I started getting just knackered, and that inner coach just, I was just bored. And I was like, but yeah, but what if I actually do want this to go away now? Because I do, because it
Yeah.
bloody hurts. and
Yeah.
at that point, I started to have to, I just started to struggle more. And
Mm.
actually, it was at that point when I started to also learn a little bit more, because rather than just enduring pain, the lady who was looking after me, Adriana, she was the mother of the family that I was living with,
Yeah.
and she said it's okay to cry. She could see
Oh,
myself wobbling, and
yeah,
I
yeah,
my I started welling up a little bit because of the generosity and help that I was being provided by all the community members. They were just gorgeous, and it wasn't the pain, but it was the. But then, well, as soon as she said you've got permission to cry, the floodgates just opened, and I am a
yeah,
big softie, I have to admit, but sometimes you just need that release, don't you? You don't realize,
yeah.
I guess, as a dad, as a husband, all of those responsibilities that you build up, build up, build up. You go, I can cope with that. I can cope with that. I can cope with that. But then when you got permission to just let go, and I
Mm.
cry, I sobbed hard for about 20 minutes, really, really hard, and it was therefore so cleansing, like just freeing of all that build up of tension. I guess it was beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. We might have shed a little tear watching last night as well. And
Yeah.
we watched some of your bull jumping one as well, and obviously a lot of your other programs. And I was really looking forward to chatting to you today because I think biohacking it's often tech, and some people sort of associate it with sort of bro science, but often
Yeah.
actually it ends up just being more primal, getting into a more primal space, doing a bit of grounding or getting some light outside in the morning, that sort of thing. And I wonder if you feel that we've lost touch with natural rites of passage, coming of age processes, and that's why you wanted to make the series.
100%. I mean, yes. Could I just answer yes?
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, I originally went into this. I wanted to make a tribal show. I'd always loved Bruce Parry's show 15 years ago, and I wanted to
Yeah,
make a tribal
likewise.
show
Yeah.
because I've spent a lot of time with indigenous communities, and I just thought, do you know what? Rather than just being the guinea pig all the time, I'd love to just, change it up a bit and go and spend time. And when I stumbled across rite of passage ceremonies, I thought immediately it'll be televisual. Discovery will love it because it's
Mm,
they're events and they're quite spectacular and they're quite visual. But then
mm,
the more I dug into it, the more I realized that they're not really about young men just beating their chests and like
yeah.
showing how tough they are in order to get through things. They're about kind of almost this transition phase. So they're saying goodbye to the selfishness of youth and they're
Mm,
embracing the kind of responsibility and community aspect of adulthood. And
mm,
and it struck me that it couldn't be a more pertinent time, because we in the Western world we don't have that ingrained in our culture. We don't go through one of these maturing processes, and you can see the results in the sort of geopolitical state of the world right now. And
mm,
it's not just the West either, is it? But obviously the world leaders are behaving in quite selfish, childish ways, and you really can, and I
mm,
don't think I'm over egging it to say that you can see it, you can see the maturity of the leaders. Immediately you sort of step into this space where you are understanding and welcoming of other people and you're considerate and stuff like that. You can see selfish childishness a mile off, can't you?
mm,
It's like, God, really? Is that who's representing us? That's just bonkers. So yeah, I do think that it's a kind of hack because I think it leads to being a better human. And I guess a hack is anything that just advances you towards being the best version of yourself or having the
mm,
best life that you could possibly have, doesn't it? And I think all of the things that I mean, I do meditate. I would say that's a hack. It allows me to come from a space which is less heady, less analytical, and therefore less full of fear and worry and stuff like that. And I try and come from a more animalistic place, a more soul place. And
mm,
and when I do that, when I tend to do that, and occasionally in my life it's happened on runs or something, and you get into that flow state and you just have this amazing run where for 40 minutes you're almost flat out and for some reason you don't tire. And I think you trying to manage yourself through the through each and every day to try and be in as more of a flowing sort of animalistic state as possible. I think that's probably the hack that I concentrate on the most in life, I'd
mm.
say.
And then it occurred to me watching the two episodes that I've seen of this new series is that also there's all sorts of other things around rites of passage, including the pride that the elder people in the tribe take in passing on their knowledge, guiding, and the respect that the young people have for the elder members of the tribe. So it actually benefits everybody, even the ones who are older in the tribe too.
100%. One of the big epiphanies was that it was about community. It wasn't about the individual. And I didn't
Mm,
realize that. I'd literally thought this is going to be about you. This is going to be you standing on your own head and proving how you can go through these, even though you're 50 years old and kind of yawning at the whole concept of proving yourself still.
yeah.
Um, but it wasn't about that. And then again, that's a nice epiphany, and I think it's very easy from the outside to look at these events and just go, oh, what an idiot. Why would he run over the backs of bulls, or why would he put his hands in wasps' nests or bees' nests in Tanzania, and why would he do all of these things that are just difficult? And I think it is all about community. It's about, weirdly, I think that the bullet ant one does sort of concisely tell the story well. I think, immediately I started doing it, I realized that it wasn't just about me, and it was about the support I was being given. It brought everyone together, and it also, yeah, it did connect the generations, because you're being passed this. I mean, if you were to ignore the elders and their advice as to how to prepare for this, you'd be an absolute fool, and
Yeah,
you'd be kicking and screaming on the floor. And you saw that the guy that I did it with, he was called, ah
the young boy.
yeah, he's 12-year-old. Isao, I think he was called. Anyway, Isao. He's 12 years old, and he'd wanted to do it for the last 2 years. And his mum said,
Yeah,
"No, you're too young. You're just too young." But
yeah,
watching this boy of 12 years old show the maturity to go, look, I know how hard this is going to be, and I do not want to let my family and my relations and my friends down. I'm not going to scream out. And he didn't, bless him. He was incredibly mature. And I think to have something like that he can see before he starts going through it, he can see for multiple years in advance of that, and therefore start preparing mentally for going through it, putting himself in a situation where he knows he's going to find it very difficult. And what child starts doing that kind of mental preparation in the early teens? They just don't. In
yeah.
our world, it's all about video games and social media and all of that stuff. Yeah.
Well, perhaps a little bit less for some families than others. And I know obviously you live in Costa Rica, and we are here
Yeah.
in Portugal now, and we're very lucky to live in a slightly more
Right.
outdoors and perhaps slightly more traditional environment, actually.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
thing we discussed last night was we've got one boy who's 7 tomorrow, and we were saying,
Yeah.
well, what's he going to do? What's going to be his rite of passage? Because I didn't have anything like that, nothing. And watching it last night, I thought, oh, it would have been really nice to have something like that for lots of different
Mm.
reasons.
I'm writing a book at the moment called Rite of Courage, actually, and it is because going through the series did make me realize that it's. I think personally, it doesn't mean that you have to go and stick your hands in bullet ants, but I
Mm,
think you can view the things that you have in life that are difficult in a certain way that they can benefit you. And I think understanding rites of passage, rites of passage are normally, traditionally, there's some guru who wrote about them in the 1920s. Anyway, he divided them into, it's a separation phase where you go away from your community. There's the transition phase where you
yeah.
go through something very difficult and you change as a human being. But importantly, then there's the being received phase where you come back and you're seen by the community, and they say, we see the change in you, we see what you've been
Mm,
through, and we see the new version of you. And I think that's
wow.
really critical, because then that
Mm,
that really embeds it in. And I, for example, would say walking the Amazon for me would have been an amazing rite of passage.
yeah. Yeah.
But I came home and I kind of swapped out the elders for, you know, likes on Facebook, and it was weird. It got swept down this kind of ego route rather than being wholesome, and they were likes of people that I didn't even know, let alone had any connection to. And so, I think it's very difficult. I think we can end up doing challenge after challenge after challenge in an addictive manner in order to try and be a better version of ourselves, potentially, if that's why you're doing it, rather than just being an adrenaline junkie. But I
Mm,
think there's something about understanding why you're doing it, having intentions, knowing that there's change going on, and then having that validated by being seen by the people around you. We don't have elders, obviously, but we do have, family members and best friends and people that we love. And I think it's those people that it's really super important to involve in the whole process, so that you don't just end up doing it in a kind of way that doesn't end up being wholesome, where you're just
mm,
escaping and then coming back and, oh, I need to go and escape again. But for me, I don't think it's that we necessarily need to add rites of passage as a sort of ceremonial thing in the youth. Although, there are companies that do that. They take you up onto
mm.
Exmoor and you do sort of starvation exercises for 5 days, and they coach you through the maturing sort of
Yeah.
process and what you're going through. That does exist in a very small scale in the UK, but but I think it's how you view the hard things in life. And I think we're all going through rite of passages at different I mean, I'm definitely going through a transition phase. I was 50 on Boxing Day just after Christmas, and there's still potentially like 30, 35 years of my life ahead of me.
Mm,
And yet I have to acknowledge I'm not the young man that I once was. And, I'm not going to be running up and down mountains all the time. So it's kind of, there is a transition. You have to let go of certain things, and evolving into a new valuable role is really important for me. I don't want to just, you know, retire and drink gin and tonics and play golf and all that sort of bollocks. I want to have a really powerful 50s. I want to
yeah.
do something with my life. And I think, all of these things help you evolve, I think. And, in terms of biohacking, putting yourself through any challenge is perfect for evolution, I think, because
Mm,
whatever's going wrong with you, whether that's, I don't know, if you go through it with, there's two of you, whether it's the communication that's breaking down or whether it's your
mm,
own confidence that needs to be worked on or whatever is your weakest link is the thing that lets you down. And therefore that's the thing you have to work on. Therefore, you can't fail to come out of the challenge a slightly more evolved human being because you've had to work on the bit that let yourself down, which is why I'm such an advocate of all of these, I don't know, hardships, I guess, that I put myself through and just challenges in life, just taking the difficult route because I think you grow each time. Yeah.
mm. And it seems to me, having watched your original Walking the Amazon challenge, and I mean, it was just there were so many points where we were just like, this guy's absolutely nuts. And it was your sort of bloody-minded determinedness that sort of just carried you through. Often when people were dropping like flies who had signed up to go with you.
Yeah.
But it seems to me that emotionally you're quite, I mean, you talked about how that was a big rite of passage for you. Seems to me, following you on Instagram now, talking to you today, emotionally you're quite a different person now to how you were then.
Definitely. I mean, but I have put myself through so much, and I mean, you live in Portugal now, so you're not exactly the sort of hermit that stays in one place. You're quite adventurous in that respect, and then you're quite putting yourself out there in the world and learning new cultures and probably new languages and stuff like that. Like
Mm.
you can't fail but see when you go back to the village and. There's always someone in the village who's never been to London, and like where I live, and like, I've got some lovely friends, but they're the ones that have never been to London. You're like, what the and yeah, I just think I put myself out there, and therefore I have changed a lot, and I have grown up, and the ego that walked the Amazon, and it was pure bloody minded ego. I wanted to beat
Yeah.
my chest and say I was super fucking tough because I've walked the length of the Amazon, and have that reflected back to me because actually I was insecure, and it all stemmed from without going too deep, it all stemmed from an insecurity that started by being an adopted person, and I think there's an acknowledgement amongst adopted kids that it leaves a scar. It leaves you
Mm.
feeling rejected, abandoned, all of the sort of heartstrings type, get out the violin stuff. But it does, and as a result, I needed to stand on a world stage and beat my chest and prove that I was super tough. But that doesn't mean, even though it was an ego-based thing, that it didn't end up helping me in teaching me and being quite wholesome in the end. And I think maybe I entered the world of adventure for the wrong reasons, but because of this incremental sort of little evolutions that you have each time you go through something difficult, I think it has turned me into a much more mature human being. And I don't think I would have been a good dad or father before that. I was volatile. I was getting into fights. I wasn't even moral. I'd never sat down and worked out a list of morals that I wanted to. And that happened on the island experience that after I did the Amazon. I went
Oh
and
yeah. Naked and
said that I
marooned.
was going to survive naked on an island for 60
Yeah.
days, and you'd think it would be all about drinking coconuts and killing snakes and lighting fires and stuff. But the thing that totally undid me is I didn't, with nobody reflecting back at me, with that that concept that when you walk into a room and you tell a joke and everyone laughs, you're funny. Or in my case, if you walk the Amazon and everyone says you're super tough, you're super tough. And
Mm.
you go on an island and there's no one there to reflect anything back at you, and it felt like a void. I felt sick physically, and I didn't know who I was. And I had to. It's about 3 weeks into it, I think. I just had to sit down. I didn't have a pencil and paper, but I made a list in my head of who I wanted to be. And I was like, well,
Mm.
okay, do you want to be flaky or do you want to turn up on time? He's like, well, I want to be, reliable. And they're like, do you want to cheat on people, or do you want to lie to people, or do you want to be honest and respectable? I was like, obviously honest. And halfway through, I stopped myself making this list, and I was like, well, you're just making it up, Ed. This is just stupid. And then I restarted myself, and I was like, yeah, but if you don't make it up, who's going to bloody make it up? Somebody's got to decide
Yeah.
what you stand for, and it should be you, not anybody else. And this is a perfect opportunity because no one else is around, and this is who. Now I genuinely think that is the person that I am, because I'd never gone through that process, and I think a lot of people don't go through that process. They just get
Yeah.
by in life, and whatever works, and if things get a bit difficult, let's have a pint, and we've all done that, and it works, and that's the problem. It works to a certain extent, doesn't it? But certainly I found in my adult life that things, I was letting myself down. I was letting other people down. I wasn't as good a dad as I wanted to be, and that's why I like going on this journey. It's not because I'm a navel gazer. It's not because I'm super introspective and just need it all to be about me. It's just I want to be a good version of myself, so that I can be the best dad I can, and the best father, the best husband that I can, and a good mate, and all that sort of stuff. Really, I think it's the more baggage you've got, the less ability you've got to do those roles well. Yeah.
Yeah. And with rites of passage, I sort of do feel like there's not a particularly, for many people, there's not a strong male presence and a strong collective idea of what it is to be male in our culture, like there used to be, which
Mhm.
rites of passage can give us. And I wonder, and just going back to us watching last night, you being with your family, you've got boys as do you have boys as well as
I've got
girls?
a boy and three girls.
Eight
Yeah,
boys and three girls. So we were sort of thinking, well,
not
what's our boy
eight.
going to do?
A boy,
A
not
boy. I know
eight
you haven't got
boys.
eight. I know you haven't got eight. I think you didn't spend that long in Brazil. And I don't know if you've heard of Ben Greenfield. He's a sort of well-known health
um,
and biohacker. He's got
okay,
twin boys who I think are 15, and he sent them off for 9 months backpacking across America.
okay.
Can you imagine? I mean, and all
15.
for this,
Yeah,
15,
wow.
all for this, for the whole rite of passage. And they're
Yeah.
back now, and so he obviously appreciated what you were showing in your. But have you thought about rites of passage for your boy?
He's young. He's only 8 at the moment,
Mm,
so I've got a little bit of time to
mm,
to decide. At the moment, it's in a kind of conceptual phase where I know that if he skims the surface of life, the thing that I don't despise many things in life, but entitled children is one of the things that I really, really don't like. And there's a risk when you're relatively successful,
yeah.
and you live in a nice place in Costa Rica, that your kids are going to become entitled.
Mm,
And literally, I think I as I said before, I'm an honest human being, but the only lie that my wife and I are going to say to our children is that you're not going to inherit anything,
mm.
because I'm happy to say that lie, because I don't want them to ever think that they're going to have a free pass through life, that things are
Yeah.
going to fall for them naturally, because I think it ruins lives. It takes that motivation, it takes that drive away, it takes that, I need to stand up on my own 2 feet
Mm,
and sort it out for myself away, doesn't it? And I think that's the crux of life. I think we live in a blue zone. Bizarrely, I didn't know when we moved here that it was a blue zone. So there's more
wow.
people living to 100 than most places in the world. And they talk about evaluating it by diet and evaluating it by lifestyle and this and that. And I think one of the acknowledged reasons that people live here is because they've got something to live for. They have drive, they have motivation, and I think that
Mm,
keeps people alive, doesn't it? You often hear about
mm,
people who've retired, and then they die quite quickly afterwards because their reason for living is gone. And so I do think, in terms of Ran, I want him to go through something. It's very hard, isn't it? As a dad, you're automatically going, yeah, but I don't want to put him through anything too
I know.
hard. You're like, yeah, I do want to protect him. I don't want anything, and even at school, like if he went to a school when we first got here where he was being bullied in the playground. And I found it so difficult. You'd drop him off at school and he'd be crying, and the teacher had to restrain him. And then I'd walk
Mm,
to the gates, which is about 200 meters away, and I could still hear him screaming for me. And then I'd get in the car and I'd start crying. And it's
mm,
like, no one wants that for their children, but that having gone through it, and don't get me wrong, we didn't do nothing about it. We took him out of that school. He's in a much nicer school now. But no one wants that for their children. But I know full well, if I look back at my life, it's the hardest things, it's the toughest things, it's the
mm.
saddest bits that have that have allowed me to grow the most. And so yeah, it's finding that balance, I guess, isn't it? You don't want things to be so traumatic that it goes downhill, but you don't want it to be so skimming the surface that they never learn and grow. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. We had something similar with the schools here. Mainly
Did
because
you?
it's like, well, Portuguese. If you're the only English speaking kid and you don't speak Portuguese and you're at a Portuguese school, it's pretty hard. But now he's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And did he just had to catch up super quick, I guess.
yeah.
And
Super quick. But he was 4 when we moved here, and now he's almost
right.
7. So
Yeah.
so started picking up the language quite quickly, and now
Yeah.
constantly corrects me on my Portuguese accent. So
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm
yeah,
sure.
yours is pretty
Yeah.
good. I heard you speaking a bit of Brazilian Portuguese in that show. It's pretty impressive.
I it was rusty. I mean, obviously when I walked the Amazon, I was in Brazil for a year at that point, but I was
Yeah.
walking with a Peruvian, and we were speaking Spanish to each other the whole time. So yeah, I mean, I did a couple of interviews in Portuguese on Brazilian TV. Um, but yeah, no, weirdly, I found it easier to speak Portuguese to that lot than another episode was in Ecuador, and so that's
Mm,
Spanish, and I obviously speak Spanish here, and I found them harder to communicate with than
yeah.
Portuguese. And I like Portuguese a lot. It's like once you get an ear for it, it's like it sounds weird at first, doesn't it? Especially if you're used to Spanish, and then once you get an ear for it, or you hear someone really cool speaking it, especially a like Brazilian lady perhaps, and then you go, oh, actually, I really like this language. It's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of biohacking,
Yeah.
I was really interested when they were talking about the ant venom, or rather the ant bites. The main guy who was training you said, "I never get sick. This is like a sort of hormetic stress response that then protects me." And I wondered if what else do you do to look after your sort of physical health? Is there anything that you've picked up from your extreme adventures that you've now brought into your day-to-day life?
I think lots of things. I think the mental aspect is the one that I've focused on a lot over the years. And meditation was probably the hack that allowed me to make proper advances forward on that one. I started doing an MSc in mindfulness-based psychotherapy when I met my wife, and then when you meet somebody and you've slightly got less time and then we started having children, and anyway, that fell away a little bit. But it shows where my
Okay.
interests are.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, from a health perspective, the beginning of last year, beginning of 2025, I wasn't sleeping properly, and my wife's training to be an Ayurvedic practitioner. So Ayurveda
Mm,
being the sort of the medical arm of yoga, I guess, an Indian
mm,
sort of philosophy of using food and herbs to make you better, to make you whole and well. And they plugged the Ayurvedic practitioner plugged me into an ECG and did a load of tests on me, which I was quite surprised. I didn't realize they'd use technology because I thought it was also old school, but they
yeah.
do now. Anyway, um, the results came back were shocking. Like it was all the precursors for big illnesses. My
Wow.
endocrine system was running on fumes. I was in fight or flight about 85% of the time it came out, and I was just like, what is going on here? Like why? I've been in Costa Rica for 2 years at that point.
Mm,
By then, and I was just like, why am I in fight or flight? This isn't right. And so I decided to address it, and I cut out a lot of things. I cut out smoking. I cut out, and I'd fallen back into that really, and I'd cut out drinking. I cut out junk food. I even through the Ayurvedic advice cut out the positive distractions from myself. Like I cut out exercise. I cut out. I don't know, watching stimulating TV. I cut out all sorts of things, and so just to really understand myself, and it
mm,
was quite dark at first. I'd never struggled giving up smoking. I've always been able to drop it, but I found myself snapping at the kids, and I was like, this surely is only going to last a few days, and then the nicotine will buy my system will be all right. About a month later, I was destroying my marriage. I have to admit, and hadn't really, I couldn't really work out what was going on. I was like, I just wasn't comfortable in my own skin. We've just moved house, but we had a little balcony outside, and I couldn't sit there like with a cigarette and a beer beforehand. I was in heaven. I loved where we lived, and I loved. having a little bit of time to myself on the balcony. Just couldn't even sit there. I wanted to rip my skin off. It was horrendous. And it
Wow.
ended up. This is a slightly long story, but it is, I guess,
It's all good. Yeah.
a bit of a biohack, and it is due to the things that have helped me. Ended up booking myself for my 50th birthday present to myself on a darkness retreat to these. They're called sky caves in Oregon in the United States,
Wow.
and I'd been to my mate Tom Meek's 50th birthday party in England in the summer. And I think at one point when Come On Eileen came on the disco, I was just like, I don't want to do this for my 50th. I want it to be more meaningful,
Yeah.
than just everyone dancing around the glitter ball. And so I put myself, it's a bit of a weird thing to do, but I put myself on this darkness retreat, took myself off on my own. It was 5 days, 4 nights, complete darkness. And you get fed through this little hatch in the wall, and when the guy Scott, he's called, who owns it, comes and feeds you, he like does a little bit of coaching just through the wall actually, to check you're okay. And anyway, I turned up in Oregon and he picked me up from the airport and he knew who I was. So he's like, I've got no doubt, Ed. I was on a bit of a high and I was like, this is going to be amazing. And he's got, Ed, I've got no doubt that you can endure this. You've toughed out loads of things in your life, but he's like, the thing that I think will happen if you just endure it is that if your nervous system gets dysregulated, your cortisol will be high. You'll come out and you've coped with it, but you'll come out in a kind of frazzled state. And he's like, the thing I think you need is to learn how to be kind to yourself. So he's like, when you start, and I was like, what are you talking about? I'm just going into a dark room for
Yeah.
5 days. It's not gonna touch me, right? He's like,
Yeah.
just wait and see. I was like, all right, okay. I don't want to be too cocky about this. And
Yeah.
anyway, the advice he gave was that if I start feeling dysregulated and I can't calm myself down, he said, light a candle. And I was like, okay. I was like, but again, I was like, well, I don't want to do that because if I light a candle, then what's the point in coming all the way to Oregon to do a darkness retreat if you're just going to make it light? I want to endure the whole 5 day. I went through that whole, I guess, slightly stereotypical reaction to the advice he was giving. Anyway, day one, I started to spiral in the dark. I started to get really dysregulated, and he explained it actually as being like the humans need their sight in order to confirm that there is no risks there. As soon as you pass a certain amount of time in the dark, your nervous system does start getting put out of kilter. And they used to not have as much counselling attached to their darkness retreats as they did, but they now do because they were seeing so many people leave and totally with their nervous system totally dysregulated. So anyway, I found myself spiraling very, very quickly. Did light a candle, felt extraordinarily guilty and full of shame and like what a fucking pathetic human being I am for having to light a candle. But I couldn't help but acknowledge it calmed me down, and I mean, I could feel myself starting to relax, and ended up having to do that every day, and it was weird because when he would come each day to give me the food, and he gives you all this organic, amazing food that they grow on their land, and he would say, "How are you feeling it?" And I just wanted to give him the answer, which was, "Yeah, I'm connecting to the darkness, and I'm having this amazing spiritual experience," and it wasn't happening for me, and so I was. At times I was feeling lonely, at times I was feeling abandoned, and I was just honest with him. And every day he would give me the same advice. He's like, "What if it's okay to feel this way?" He's like, "What if it's okay?" And it's like, not is it is okay, but what if? Just allow yourself that option. And it didn't sink in for about 3 days, and then suddenly on about the third day, I just went. There was just something a bit of me going, "Oh right, I get what he's on about here. Yeah, I feel lonely, but that's okay. I don't have to push against it." And essentially, I had this epiphany that I've been pushing all the negative emotions away, loneliness, sadness, fear, grasping after all of the other emotions, the joy, the happiness. And I think to an extent we all do that, don't we? And the moment I actually went, do you know what? And this is a bit weird, but I envisaged a big round table inside myself. It's like sort of King Arthur's table. And I invited all of my emotions to come and sit down, and everyone had a seat. Whether they were good emotions or bad emotions. And the moment I did this, I had this unbelievable feeling of relaxation. Like I've never felt as relaxed or as calm, then that suddenly got kind of transmuted into pure joy. I was so
Wow.
high, and and um, and I think for me it was a real understanding. I'd spent my life distracting, from all of from using my phone,
Mm,
cigarettes, alcohol, food has been a big one for me as well.
mm,
The moment that was all taken away, I could
mm,
see the dysregulation. That's what happened to me at the beginning of 2025. That darkness retreat, I thought it was all going to be a spiritual experience about connecting to the darkness. It wasn't. It was understanding my own nervous system and understanding how I'd been fighting the very natural responses to certain things. Like, I don't know, someone does something to make you angry. That anger that comes up, I'd been pushing it down and I'd been not allowing my emotions to actually express. And he said, look, you don't even have to allow them to express externally. As long as you validate them internally, you can choose to do nothing.
mm,
You have control. He's like, but you've got to let all the emotions be felt. And for me, that was one of the biggest epiphanies of my whole life. I've spent my life being tight, being stressed, not sleeping well, actioning in fight or flight. If there's an emergency, give me a call.
mm.
I'm brilliant in an emergency. But you don't want to live your whole life like
Yeah.
it's a bloody emergency, do you? And that's why I
Mm,
guess I've gravitated to survival and stuff, because it's just like, brilliant, we're in another emergency, let's
yeah.
survive. But as I was obviously reaching my 50s, and I realized if I carry on like this, I'm gonna die young. You can't operate in that parasympathetic nervous system continuously. It's not conducive to a long life, is it? So for me, that darkness retreat was one of the biggest epiphanies, and therefore I guess one of the biggest hacks, I guess, that I've experienced in recent years, certainly.
Yeah. And interesting that in rites of passage, actually, a lot of it is about the same thing. It's about accepting, isn't it? If you fight the
Yeah.
pain, or the how a lot of people, a lot of them are really scared, aren't they, before they get involved in these rites of passage, then it's going to be a
Yeah.
lot worse. But if you accept and you don't cry until after you've taken the gloves off or whatever it might be, and then you do cry and let it all out, that can help you get through it.
And I guess it's teaching you about life, isn't it? We all know if we dig our head and put our head in the sand and ignore our problems, they don't go away. If you turn to a beer or a distraction or a chocolate or whatever, like, it only makes you adds a layer of shame on top of it, and you bury all of this stuff internally. And I think if facing things head on has definitely been some of the one of the and just accepting things for how they are, like, be that internally, but also externally, like navigating the world thinking that everything should be how I want it is utterly naive, really, isn't it?
Mm,
Thinking that, the weather should be a certain way, or my wife should behave a certain way, or I should have more money in the bank, or Discovery should give me another deal, or whatever. It's like, that's great for you, but the universe is how it is, and I think just
yeah.
allowing it all, and obviously it's quite a stereotypical sort of spiritual talk, I guess, isn't it? Just allowing things to be as they are. But I think it's easier said than done when we all got our responsibilities and our goals and our wants and desires in this world, and we want a good life. And so it's combining the two. I think it's having an idea of who you want to be, but without having those specific goals that you need to grasp at all the time, so that you're
Mm,
perpetually dissatisfied because you're not there yet. And just going, actually, no, what I want is exactly what I've got. I'm moving forward, but I'm on a path that is accepting of everything rather than stressed out because it's not got certain things yet, or it's got things that you don't want, and you're fighting what is.
yeah.
Yeah, I
And
think that
and you're
has
in
been
Costa
my big
Rica. That's
lesson.
not too bad, is it?
Well, it's not,
You can
baby,
accept
because
that.
but as you know, in Portugal, you take your shit wherever you go, don't you? Like, it's
Yeah.
not like suddenly life becomes chilled out and you're this super happy person. It's like, and as that ECG for the Ayurvedic practitioner,
Mm,
I was in fight or flight the whole time. It doesn't change things, and
mm,
whether it's frustrations at the government in England or whatever, and then you come here and it's like, well, you have to queue in the bank for 3 hours, or the roads have got fucking huge potholes in the middle of it. There's always something to have a grumble about if you're in that mental state, I guess.
yeah.
But if
Yeah.
you are in that accepting, appreciative state, then yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. It's lovely to chat to you. And how long do you meditate a day?
Only about 10 minutes. I mean, it doesn't
That's
really
good
impact
though.
my. I tell you what, I have, when I come back from dropping the kids off, we just moved house and it takes 10 minutes to walk the kids to their bus stop now. So we deliberately walk it
Mm.
because I'm about to do a new episode of a new series of Marooned. I'm doing it barefoot as well. So it's nice. So you get out in the
Oh, are
morning,
you?
you walk
Yeah.
barefoot
Yeah.
walk barefoot to the bus stop, then come back and then I go on another little walk and like, it's not meditative as such, but no, I guess it is. I
Mm.
use walking more than anything else, just because it's
Mm.
out in nature. My feet are connected to the ground, and I'm just allowing my thoughts to kind of do what they want, but then hopefully lose momentum and just so concentrate on my breath and my the soles of my feet and things like that, so that by the time I'm back, I feel like I'm in a stronger position to enter the world. And it's and it always the modern world being as it is, and all of the stresses and strains that everybody has in terms of just being a responsible human being, and all the scare stories in the news and stuff, it always drags you away from that centered place, isn't it? So I do think having
Mm.
a practice is super important. And somebody said to me the other day, it's like a practice, a kind of centering practice is super important, because you're not like a box where you can read this book on spirituality and therefore you know it. It's more, you're more like a fire, and you can have put all the amazing wood on the fire yesterday that you like, but if you've not fed the fire today, or if you've just been a bit negligent and put damp wood on it, or if you've not tended to it, it's going to
Mm.
go out, it's going to fizzle out. And so I do think that, just as a hack, just looking after yourself daily, having that morning routine, having that ability to reset yourself in your own way, however it works for you, is super important, personally.
Yeah. And the other
Mm.
thing for me is, having been a journalist for 25 years, an absolute news junkie, just
Yeah.
blocking all news from my phone and my computer. I still get it. I still hear the news on the radio or get it. I still know everything that's going on. But
Yeah.
I'm so triggered by listening and watching to it all the time. And I don't have
Yeah.
the self control to not look at it. So now I just block it. And that's great.
I agree with you. Yeah, no, I did.
Yeah.
I add Instagram to my phone to post, and then I delete it straight
Do
away,
you?
because I can't trust myself. If I
Yeah.
occasionally I'll leave it on my phone, and
Yeah.
I just find myself there again. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is pathetic, and yet it's not, because it's designed so well that it will
I,
suck
I,
anyone in.
I've got a hack for that,
Mm.
actually, Ed.
Go
If
on.
you tell, you can, the only way to properly ban things from your phone is if you
Yeah.
tell it that it's porn. And then it won't show it to you. If you can use the content restrictions and say,
Okay.
I don't want to see adult content, and Instagram is adult content. It's not, but then it's actually going to take you seriously when you say you don't want to have a look at
But then
it.
you just go into your content settings and change it to
You do, but
allow adult
it's much more
content.
complicated. It's much more
Okay.
complicated.
Okay.
And if you
Okay.
really want to go seriously, you have to let someone else have the controls and say that this is my child, and they're not allowed to look at Instagram.
Oh, I see. For your kids.
You could do well. Someone else could do that for you as well. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
still a
I
workaround. I
always
mean,
think of more for
yeah,
yourself. Mm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Ed, lovely. Listen, congratulations on the new series. And good luck
Thank
with
you,
you
Tony.
going naked and marooned again. I guess it's not going to be in Portugal. It's a bit too easy in Portugal, is it? But if you ever come here, let us know.
Mate, I would love to. We talked about Portugal as an option when we came out here, actually. And I
Mm,
think if it had been Spanish speaking, we might have well gone
really?
for Portugal. It's a beautiful country. Yeah. Yeah. Love it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we love it. But
Mm.
anyway, the series is Rite of Passage. It's on Discovery, isn't it? And
It is. Yes.
and
It
we
is.
subscribed to Discovery to watch it through Amazon Prime, and it was very cheap to do so. So
Is
definitely
it really?
recommend it to people. Yeah, yeah. So it's good.
Do what he
Um,
says.
yeah, yeah. And where can people follow you and find out more? And your Instagram, which you only load onto your phone a couple of times a week to post.
It's yeah. If that I think it's Ed_Stafford is my handle on Instagram. But I mean, if you just type in Ed Stafford, unfortunately, to Google, you'll be bombarded with it all. It's I'm everywhere. You can't get rid of me. But
Good stuff,
yeah, thank you,
Ed.
Tony. I appreciate that.
Great to
And
chat.
really nice chatting to you. Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you for coming on.